panel found, bar one member, in a majority judgment, that he was not guilty of unprofessional conduct. In fact, Advocate Joan Adams told the panel, the independent panel, that he was not acting at the time on Twitter as a medical professional. He was responding as an author in all likelihood, and as a proponent of the low-carb, high-fat or Banting diet, although I believe that there is a difference between the two, but we'll ask Dr. Noakes about that. That he was ambiguous at best and at worst confusing or unclear. He certainly did not advocate the cessation of breastfeeding in any way, and he did not contravene any regulation or ethical law. I bring now Dr. Tim Noakes. Doctor, congratulations. It's been a very rough road for you, where your integrity has been brought into question, and you've finally been given the all clear.
Yes, thank you very much. It's been a great moment for us. You're quite right that my whole scientific career was put in question by this, so we had to fight it as hard as we possibly could. We did that, and the outcome is as we'd hoped.
Prof, describe the past 3 years to me, from that minute when you sent that tweet to the run-up and to finally today's judgment. What sort of toll has it taken on your career and you on a personal level?
Well, fortunately, it was kind of the end of my career, because I retired a few months after this whole debacle started. But the emotional strain was remarkable, because I have spent 40 years working at the University of Cape Town and developing science and really being recognized as a world-class scientist. In fact, I'm an A1 rated scientist, and my own university turned against me. And I think that was the worst moment of it all, and sort of suggested that I'd lost my mind. And my wife and I decided we were just going to take this on. Whatever the cost, whatever the emotional cost, whatever the financial cost was, we were not going to allow this to happen. Because if the decision had gone against me today, it would have destroyed my life. I would have had nothing to live for. That's how bad it was. That's how big the issues were. And when the people made the complaint, they should have realized what they were doing. They should have realized that this is what was going to happen, that my family and myself will be put under this enormous pressure. And everyone in South Africa thought they could have a go at me. And it was astonishing. And I'm just so glad now that that's an end to that, and it can't go on any further.
There was wild applause from the audience here in Rondebosch in Cape Town when the judgment was handed down. But at worst, on Twitter, you've been called crazy, mad, and I should think for you, which was possibly quite hurtful, that you'd put a child's life in danger, which the independent body found of the HPCSA found not to be the case at all. Absolutely no harm was done to any child by you giving that advice that you did.
You know, the one elephant in the room was that I wrote a book called Raising Superheroes, which contains the nutritional advice that I believe in, and it was never raised because it's correct. And even ADSA, when they went through it, they could not find any errors in it related to infant nutrition. And that is, in my view, one of the best books, the most scientific books ever written on raising children. And it's kind of got completely forgotten. So I've done my bit, as far as I'm concerned, to try and elevate people's ideas of what they should be eating. You see, we have to understand that the real elephant in the room is this growth of obesity and diabetes, which is killing this nation. We run out of medical funds in 10 years' time because there's so much diabetes and there's so much obesity, and those are the most taxing diseases financially. We will not have medical services because of them. And they start in 1977 when the US dietary guidelines change, and they say we must take fat out the diet and we must put carbohydrates in the place. Now what happened in 2015 was that the US dietary guidelines changed, and they said there should be no limit on the amount of fat in the diet, and no one gives that information out. So I know that the US dietary guidelines fall exactly in what we talk about, but no one will acknowledge it. And you have to ask the question why, and you have to ask, who was behind this trial against me? Why did they want to shut me up? Why did they want to get me off Twitter? And those are big questions which may never be answered, and I'm really not prepared to speculate on what they are. But the reality is that South Africans have never been less healthy. And that begins in 1977. And it begins because we give the wrong dietary advice. And all I'm saying is, let's go back to 1960s when we were much healthier, when we didn't have this obesity diabetes epidemic. And no one will address it. No one addresses the harm of the dietary advice we're currently giving. They say, oh, Dr. Noakes, there's potential for harm with this low carbohydrate diet. There is no potential for harm. It was not shown. What struck me in this whole trial was we had experts came from overseas. We gave 12 days of testimony, expert testimony, including cross-examination. Nothing could be shown that what we said was wrong, and no one engaged. The expert witnesses on the other side did not read our material. They did not engage with the data. They will not engage, and the question is, why not? Why not? And the answer is because they don't have any answers.
I suppose the question for me has always been, you were a man who's built your career through many years. Why would you want to sabotage it if it wasn't something that you truly believed in, to your very core, something that you really felt was indeed the truth, and almost as a sort of Victorian Earth is flat theory. I wonder how history will remember you. But what are you going to do now, Professor Noakes?
Let me just come back to that. You know why I'm so involved in this? Because I watched my father die of type 2 diabetes, and he was given advice to eat a high carbohydrate diet. And he developed all the complications of type 2 diabetes, and I watched him dying because I didn't know any better. Today I know that type 2 diabetes is a reversible condition, and there's data coming out in December which shows that the majority of people with type 2 diabetes, you can get them off their medication and you can reverse the disease by putting them on this diet. We can reverse this disease, and yet we as doctors teach that this is an irreversible, progressive disease. It is not. Medical care is going to change in December because those data are absolutely watertight. And we have to realize that, and we have to ask the question, how can we continue to give people wrong advice that's causing so much ill health? You ask what I'm going to do, I'm going to continue to fight this fight, to bring. What we've realized is you can't change from the top because the top's not going to change, and the reasons why they can't change, you have to start from the bottom. I remind you that the idea banting, the word banting didn't exist in Cape Town 2 years ago. Today,
it's a very old diet from the 1800s, if I'm not incorrect.
Correct, and then we're told it's a fad diet. It's the original diet. It is the original diet in medicine, is the banting diet. So we are fighting to promote this idea. But the point I was making is that there's a Facebook page in Cape Town called the Facebook 7-Day Banting Facebook page, and it has 600,000 members. In 2 years, they grow by 3,000 people a day. That tells me that there are millions of South Africans who adopted this diet, and they didn't adopt it because I told them to. They saw their friends getting better, their weight coming down, their diabetes reversing, their asthma disappearing, and all these sorts of things, and they report it. And you just go to that Facebook page and you will see what's happening. There's an undercurrent, and that's where it's coming from, and it's completely irreversible. It's not going to change. South Africans are taking health in their own hands, and it doesn't matter what they're told, they're going to do it.
Professor Tim Noakes, thank you so much. He's not going away, whether you like him or not, whether you agree with his nutritional advice or not.